Hey folks, this is your weekly check-in for the week of October 7th through what's the last day? The 13th. I'm sorry I didn't get to do a check-in last week just with the Wi-Fi internet stuff going on, and just trying to prioritize other things. It just wasn't able to happen, but we are back and we're going to go over all of our assignments for this week. So I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. So I'm on course info on our course schedule as always, and we are looking at this week here. It is, well, first of all, I want to say with last week's schedule and the announcement that I put out and on our schedule as well, you'll see that our assignments that we had due on the 6th yesterday were the module two assignments that I had extended due to the power outages and the internet outages and everything. And then we also had the ed puzzles and only the ed puzzles for lessons 6 and 7. Now I can see that some of you have already started on the other assignments that are due technically for this week, but those are, again, they're due for this week. So anytime that there is a module that is open, that there is other assignments in there that are not due that week, please make sure to just do the work that you have in front of you that is on the schedule here. The reason that we have it paced out this way is so that we don't accidentally go over that 21-day withdrawal period. And sometimes if we work ahead, that is able to happen. So whenever you're working on your assignments, always look at your course schedule and just make sure that you're working on the assignments that are on that course week. So for this week, we have already completed lessons 6 and 7 from module 3, and we are working on two assignments and our quiz 3. So the first assignment is our Elements and Principles of Art scavenger hunt. The second is our project one or our midterm project outline, not the full project. We are not turning in the actual project this week, just the outline. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then quiz 3. So if we go back up, all of this is going to be found in module 3. There is nothing in the projects folder. We are only looking at module 3. So when we click here, the first thing that we'll see is our quiz. So make sure that you watch lessons 6 and 7 before completing the quiz. And take that at your convenience. Remember, there is a 20-minute timer on that quiz, so don't accidentally step away from the computer. Make sure that you read all of those disclaimers before you begin it. It was fine the first couple of weeks, but I've had several students email me now saying that they have walked away or that something just totally unprecedented has happened. So again, just make sure that you're ready to take that quiz once you open it. There's like 2 or 3 screens that you have to click through before you actually get to the quiz. So it shouldn't be a mistake at that point. So just make sure that you're staying on task and that you're ready to take that quiz once it begins. Okay. So our elements and principles scavenger hunt. So this again, you need to complete this after you have completed lesson 6 and 7. Don't try to work ahead on this. It's not going to make sense. So make sure you watch those videos first. This is an interactive assignment that we will complete, or I'm sorry, this is for my, let me edit that real quick as we're talking about it. 1 second. I've got the instructions for my in-person class on there. So you guys will not complete this in class. You will complete this on your own. There are those instructions. So let's just take that little part out right there. Okay, so now that you know the basics about the elements and principles of design from modules 2 and 3, your assignment is to find these elements and principles in everyday life. Shape, line, color, variety, and the rest of the elements can be found all around us if we use our active seeing brain. Using the camera on your phone, your job is to walk around and find examples of each element and principle and photograph each one. So the instructions for this: photograph a real-life example of each element and principle for a total of 16 photographs. You cannot use the same photo or subject matter twice, so please note that these need to be from real life. They are not from drawings or other 2D media. So I don't want you to use like a poster or a like drawing from somewhere else. This needs to be like real life stuff, like patterns from, a brick or, anything. It can be anything, but I don't want you to use two-dimensional media. So posters, photographs of other things, The computer screens, things like that. You want to use things that you see in your everyday life, that, are actual like physical things. So you will then, so also we have a PowerPoint attached that I have a few examples listed for. So we'll look at that in just a second. Here's the list of all of your photos that are elements and principles that you need photos of. And so just, before you turn it in, just check off that you have each of those. So you'll need to send the photos to your email address and then download them to your computer and then upload the photos to a Google Slides presentation using one slide per photo. And then you can also use, it doesn't have to be Google Slides. It could be, PowerPoint. It could be whatever, format you want to use, but try not to use like Word or a document or something like that. It needs to be some sort of like presentation method. You can use Canva, you can use, any of those, but it needs to be like a presentation. You'll need to use one slide per photo. You'll want to label the slide with the element or principle you're using in the photo or using the photo for, and give a brief description. So if you use traffic cones in a line, say for line, I photographed a line of traffic cones, which is an example of an implied line. Doesn't have to be long, just short, sweet, to the point, and just telling me why you took the photo you did for that specific element or principle, because lots of times people will just take random pictures and upload them, and I have no idea why they included them. So make sure that you specify what part of the element or principle you saw in this real life example and why you photographed that. And then you'll just save that Google Slides document as a PDF. Please do not submit this as a link. Again, we've talked about this several times in other check-ins and everything, and it's in the instructions, but do not share your submissions ever as a link, unless I have specifically said share it as a link. But if it is a link, oftentimes I don't have access to it, and it also can't go through our plagiarism checker. So I cannot grade it. So I'll put a note on there that says, I can't grade this, email me. But just make sure that you do that. Okay. So that is that assignment. Our second assignment, our midterm project outline. This one, I'm going to spend a little bit of time on just specifying what it is that I'm looking for here, because it is a little bit more intensive than our other assignments. That's also why we don't have lessons for this week, is because I want you to focus on these two assignments more so, especially the midterm project outline. So please note, this is not the actual project. It is just the outline. Do not submit your completed paper here. The actual submission can be found in the projects module, but do not submit your real, like, final version of the project here. This is just for the outline. So attach your assignment as a PDF. Do not submit the assignment as a link, as always. Also, as always, do not select Starry Night by Van Gogh as your artwork. If you're having trouble with these instructions, please make sure to watch the weekly check-in, which you're already doing. And any additional questions or concerns, please make sure that you address them by 5 p.m. on Friday before the assignment is due. So what you are doing for this assignment, you're going to choose an artwork. It can be any artwork, but you have to stick with it for the outline and for the final version of the project. The goal is to establish a basic outline that you further develop when writing paper. You must stick with this artwork for the full assignment. Please provide the following information and be as detailed as possible. Remember, this is for your use later on. If your research is not thorough, you will just be making more works for yourself later on. And I really do mean that. So if you're not, taking the time to really investigate and like research your artwork here, in a couple weeks when this project becomes due, along with other stuff that'll be due that week, it's going to make a lot of work for you. So use this week that is a little bit lighter on material to focus on this midterm project outline and, get all your stuff set up for an easy paper, a couple weeks from now. So the art analysis for this course, again, is viewing an artwork and analyzing an artwork. Remember, this is just an outline that you'll develop later for the future paper. As I've already said, I say that a bunch because a lot of the times people will submit the final version of the paper. So there's several reminders in here. You're going to answer the prompts below to establish your outline for your intended art analysis paper. Number one, you're going to identify your chosen artwork to analyze and list the title, artist name, medium, date, dimensions, and the museum/location, and include a high quality image of the artwork. Now you can look at Google Art and Culture, you can look at another major museum, but I will say the more well-known the artwork is, the easier it'll be for you. So if you pick something that's super obscure, that doesn't have a lot of research on it, doesn't have a lot of writing on it, that might be more work than you're willing to take on, unless you just really want to go into the research of that. I would say artwork from the Impressionism movement, which came like early 1900s to the late 1800s or late 1800s to the early 1900s. Those are great ones to choose from. Renaissance paintings, those are very technical artworks. So there's a lot to write about with them. And I've got an impressionist artwork down here that I'll talk about as well. That is just for an example. So you're going to, again, identify your chosen artwork, do that label up here. That's like your pre-work for this. And then you can break this down exactly into the format that I have it here, where you're answering three major questions about form, content, and the together use of them. So for the first part here, the first question in form, what are three formal elements in the composition and how do you intend to discuss them? Please refer to lessons 3 through 6 for the formal elements. And then I would like for you to briefly describe how each of these three elements are used and point to specific parts in the artwork where they are being used at. Now, that part, easy enough. The harder part is identifying which two organizing principles do you intend to discuss? And how are these two principles of design created from the elements you chose in question 1? So, for example, if you choose color, texture, and value as your elements, then you need to talk about how emphasis and subordination, if those are your two principles you want to talk about, is created through those elements. So, for an example, the monochromatic color creates unity. That's a way that you can, use ingredients, which we've talked about, ingredients and recipes being the elements and principles. What ingredients are you using to create your recipe with? So hopefully that analogy makes sense, but these can't be disconnected. This is like building blocks to one another. You have to build with these elements to get to your principles. So just again, don't just select random things. Make sure that you're looking at your artwork, whatever that may be, and you're identifying where you see those at and how they are useful in the organization of the work. And then after you have that, this is just formal stuff. This is just how the artwork looks visually. You get to content. Now, content, again, is the meaning of the work. This is more interpretive. This is more kind of like research-based. So you'll research the artist's intention of the work, or if this is unknown, research how the work was widely received and write 1 to 2 sentences describing your findings. I would like for you to use citations for this if you are pulling from somewhere directly. And I would like for you to research, not just like use your own interpretation, like find where this, this opinion or this interpretation has came from. And then question 2, that is, what is your interpretation of the work? And hopefully, it's similar to what the artist intention was or how it was widely received after you've done the research on these 3 things, or the form and the content that's came before it. If it's something just like totally out of left field, then I'd say maybe go back to your research a bit and, see if that's an actual educated opinion of what your interpretation is. Now, lastly, together, this part I would say is probably the most challenging for students because it does really, it wraps up pretty much everything that we talked about in our previous lessons. Everything from, lessons 1 through 7 is building upon this idea of us looking at form, what the artwork looks like, how it's organized, and looking at content, what the intention is, and how that form defines the content or how the content becomes created from form. Because those things are so interlocked, and that's really how you begin to understand artwork and begin to understand how to talk about artwork. So for the together, the question is, how do you see form relating to content? I.e., the monochromatic color form creates a feeling of depression and sadness in the content. Not saying that's like a given, but that's just one way to go about it. So I'm going to actually read through this student example here. And this is exactly how I'd like for you to set up. This is like maybe a page of writing. It's not very much, but the content is super, super solid. So I'm going to read through this. Here's the artwork here. This is an Impression Sunrise by Monet, an Impressionist painter. So for form, they say, I plan to discuss how color, texture, and space are used in this piece, specifically the use of complementary colors between the blue water that we see here, blue water, and the harbor here, and the sky and the orange sun. So we see the orange sun and we see all the blue tones pretty much everywhere else. The implied texture created from short, unblended brushstrokes and the use of atmospheric perspective created by the color intensity and vertical placement. So this person, they have looked at those little short brushstrokes here that kind of create the texture of the water. And then they looked at the atmospheric perspective, or how depth is implied in the space. That's also in our space lesson. If you go back to space, we talk about atmospheric perspective and linear perspective. And this person chooses atmospheric perspective to talk about because linear perspective is not here. Atmospheric perspective is created by the color intensity. So the intensity we see here in the sun and the more subdued areas that we see around it. And then vertical placement. So we see the stuff that's closer to us is at the bottom and the stuff that's farther away from us is at the top. For the second part with the principles, this person says, I plan to discuss how emphasis/subordination and rhythm/repetition are used in this artwork. I will discuss how emphasis is created by the use of complementary color scheme and color intensity shifting from saturated in the sun to dull and muted in the blues in the sky and the water, making the sun the emphasis. I will also discuss how the short brushstrokes that create the implied texture of the water give a feeling of rhythm and repetition. For the content, these are just a quick, research will give you this answer. But for this one, Monet was a part of the Impressionists, a group of artists. This painting was experimental for the time as Impressionism had not yet been established. This was one of the first artworks to work in this style. I plan to further discuss the ideas around Impressionism. My interpretation of the piece is that the viewer is meant to focus, not should say meant to focus, on the sun and its vibrancy. We are also to get the feeling that the sun has just risen and the world is still partially in darkness from the night. And then together, the complementary color scheme, use of atmospheric perspective, and texture lead me to better understand that the sun is the emphasis of this painting. The content of the work is about capturing the feeling of the sunrise. And although Monet is using an experimental style for the time, the impressionistic style allows the viewer to better interpret the feeling of the sunrise. So that's how we're connecting those two things together there at the end. I hope that makes sense. If you've been, following along on your lessons and really trying to retain this knowledge, this should be easy for you. But for whatever reason, if you've just been doing the bare minimum, if you've just been, listening through the lessons halfway or not doing the skeletal notes or not really trying to, make this information stick in your brain, this is probably going to be challenging for you. So I would really encourage you to reach out sooner rather than later if you need help on this or if you want further clarification on your artwork. But yeah, that is your assignment for this week, is to create this outline, which again, outline is in module 3, not in the projects folder. Please do not submit your work to the projects folder. This assignment is in module 3. And that's it. That's all that you have for this week. I know it sounded like a lot and this was a little bit longer than normal. But that is what your assignment is going to be. And again, I didn't click this open or anything, but here's an example of that elements and principles scavenger hunt, just a couple slides that you could use for examples. But yeah, otherwise, I think we're good to go this week. I hope you guys are, adjusting back to normal and everything, that everybody now has power and water and, is in a safe, space at home and everything. But if you do still need help or you need assistance by any means, I would really encourage you to reach out to me or, anyone at Gaston College to try and help you the best you can. But I know it's been a rough couple of weeks and, we're here to help you. So I will see you guys next week. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.